Hey, this lesson we're going to look at intervals. Now you know what scales are and what the key of a song is. Now we're going to move on to intervals and chords, which form the harmony. Often a bass line will follow the harmony, generally playing the root or first note of a standard chord. But we'll look at the different ways that bass lines and chords can combine, so you have a better understanding of how different harmonies are made. I'm going to use the same session as before, so with all the same bass lines. Only now I've got a plucked string sound in group A, which is quite nice. So as a recap, we've looked at the pad numbers that can be used to play scales in a major key and in a minor key. So the pads that change from one scale to the other are the third note, which changes from pad 5 to pad 4 as it moves from a major to a minor third, and the 6th and 7th notes, which change from 10 and 12 to 9 and 11. The pads have the bass note set to C right now, so the scales I'm playing are in C, as I'm starting and ending on C. When making dance music, good accompanying parts can be made just by adding intervals, so 2 notes together, and complete chords with more notes in aren't always required. For lead sounds and stabs at least, as softer pads often sound better with bigger chords with more notes in. So an interval is just 2 notes in a scale played together. In other words, in the minor scale, playing notes 1 and 2 plays an interval of a second. Notes 1 and 3 plays a third. Notes 1 and 4 plays a fourth. Then 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, or just the octave at the end. Let's start with the intervals that are the same in both the major and minor scales. So the 2nd, 4th, 5th, and octave. If I play the first bass pattern from group C, which is simply a repeating first note or tonic in the scale, so a repeating C, then I can play some different intervals randomly over the top to demonstrate how they sound. I'll just play in 8th notes or quavers over the top and change between different intervals. So the 2nd, 4th, 5th, and octave. So the key could be C major or C minor right now, or any other scale that has those notes in for that matter, as there are no notes defining it as one or the other. If I introduce a third interval now, starting with the major third, then you can hear how the sound suddenly has more character, shifting into a more positive mood. And I can add the 6th and 7th intervals now too. Let's try a minor third instead though now. And with the minor 6th and 7th as well. I can also switch the first note to the top instead of the bottom, which inverts the interval. You'll notice the shift from minor third to the 2nd is an interesting one. You might recognise this from a fairly well-known Prodigy track. So you can hear how much can be done just with intervals alone. Let's make a pattern of our own now, using the same rhythm but changing the intervals. What I'll do is play a repeating 5th. So we could be in pretty much any C scale at the moment. Now I'll start playing notes above and below in a particular order to create a riff. We'll start using the notes from a C major scale. So I'm incorporating the 4th and 6th into the pattern, which you'll notice are 2 semitones, or what's called a whole tone, above and below the 5th. So it creates a very open and positive sound. Let's switch to C minor now. So bring the 6th down to a minor 6th on pad 9. So now the phrase is in C minor. And we could bring the 4th up a semitone, which makes the phrase more chromatic, as we're moving in semitones from one interval to the next. So this still has the minor sound with the minor 6th, but the augmented 4th, which isn't a note in the minor scale, makes it even more mischievous sounding. So this phrase is still in C minor right now, but has an augmented 4th, so it's playing a note outside of the scale. You just need to bear this in mind when playing it with other parts that might be playing a regular 4th, although the clash those intervals creates isn't particularly offensive. So if I play the chromatic C minor phrase with basically any of the bass lines from the last lesson, you can hear they go together. The only one we might get a clash with is the pattern, which has the bass line playing a 4th note in it. They actually sound okay together, as the intervals I'm playing and bass line have different rhythms, so the 4th notes don't sound at the same time. But if I play with the same rhythm and take out the 6th now, so just play 4ths and 5ths, you can hear that it becomes a bit more of an issue, with the very last note of both phrases definitely having more of an obvious clash now. So the timing of the intervals is crucial, as well as the notes, depending on the other notes going on in the other parts in the song. Let's shift down to the regular 4th, so you can hear how that changes things. So we're definitely in tune now, making the sounds more unified, but perhaps less interesting. If I really wanted to keep the sound chromatic, then I would change the rhythm back, and perhaps only have the augmented 4th sounding occasionally. Or even have the 6th on the end, rather than the 4th. So we're steering clear of 4ths when the bass line goes up to the 4th. I might also play notes alternately, rather than together as intervals.